Okay. All right. Well, everybody hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, fine.
Yeah. Okay. So the purpose of this meeting is that at the last Senior Advisory Committee meeting, we were presented with the U of M students' study results of the focus groups and the forums that they had and so forth. And not everybody had an opportunity to really go through them and really kind of provide some feedback. So we decided to have a separate meeting, which is today's meeting, to really focus on the senior amenities and lifestyle analysis section of the report, because there was a lot of information there. A lot of things that came up seem to be historical things that keep on coming up in terms of transportation and some housing and exercise equipment and communication and so forth. So in terms of how to talk about this today, I think that it would be useful for, I think, the committee members to share what their thoughts were in relation to the information that they did read. I do appreciate, Chris, you taking the time and putting together that amenities and lifestyle kind of timeline based on, is it short timeline, longer term, high cost, low cost items, things of that nature. So I'd like to get it. I think it's a good opportunity for everybody to have a general overview of what their thoughts were, and also how to go about, tackling some of the things that we can do, whether it be short term or long term, low cost, high cost. What's the best way to do that? Now, I have some ideas on terms of how we can approach this, but I prefer to hold off and get other people's feedback before I just go ahead and say what, kind of my ideas in terms of how to approach it. Somebody want to go ahead and share, after reviewing, just so I can comment. I spent a lot of time, I read the whole thing, but I spent a lot of time looking at the recommended implementation plan. There's some things on there that I think that are practical things that can be attended to. There's some things that we probably need communication with other parts of the city, other committees, departments, so forth, and some of them are shorter term and longer term. So if we could, spend some time on that, give some feedback, and then also, your input in terms of how to move forward. Anybody want to go ahead?
Well, I, for one, thought that they did an amazing job. And I was very pleased with some of their recommendations, some of their information. Now, and maybe Amy, you can speak to this. The issue of the street lights being LED and then the street signs being redone. Do you know, is that actually in the hamper to be looked at or to be worked on?
Street lights, yes.
The street lights, yes. Okay. Is that in conjunction? Is DTE going to do it with the LEDs?
Yes, we have one quote from them to put in standard LED bulbs, but there's some members of the Environmental Advisory Committee that think that we should use a different K, 3000 K instead of 5000 K. So I'm getting a price for the alternate LED lights and also trying to get sample lighting put in so we could see the difference between 3000 and 5000.
Okay,
So
great.
it's a process, but it's underway.
Okay, that's terrific. What about street signs?
There's
Anything?
been no movement on that.
Okay. Was it ever discussed? Am I the only person that hates the street signs?
You're not the only person, and it is not a budgeted item.
Okay. All right. Okay. The one question I had And I throw this over. Did we just lose? Jeff, are you okay? Is Jeff okay?
Yeah, he's switching devices.
Yeah, I'm
Oh.
okay. I just switched.
Shame on you. You scared me. I'm an old lady. That's not good. Something said about, which struck me, is the ARP network, getting certification for the ARP network. Is anybody familiar or understand what might be involved in being able to do that?
Yes, that's the Age-Friendly Community Initiative.
Uh-huh.
And we did look into it a couple of years ago. We brought in the city manager and the senior coordinator from Auburn Hills that went through that process. And there are actually two different initiatives. One is Communities for Life, which they recommended doing first. It's easier to do. It takes less time. The ARP was extremely comprehensive and was taking Auburn Hills years and years to complete. So the committee looked at both of those, and we decided there were so many metrics that would never apply to us because we're so small that maybe we should just kind of do our own analysis, if you will, that was tailored to just Huntington Woods.
Okay. All right. Super. All right. Only other things, Jim, that stuck out for me was what they were talking about as far as analysis of our current buildings and how possibly some of that space could be used to the advantage of the seniors as far as their desire to have a larger space than what's provided in the rec center for them. And also about potentially looking at different hours or longer hours for the rec center. But overall, I thought they did a phenomenal job.
I agree.
Okay. What was that?
Somebody got an email.
Oh, okay.
Probably me.
It wasn't me.
Probably me. Melissa, Chris, Lenny, any?
I thought, first of all, I was surprised at some of it because I thought that we were doing it like the intergenerational stuff and there's so much great programming, but it kind of led me back to what you said, Jim, at I think our last meeting about maybe increasing the staffing for the senior coordinator in the rec center, wondering if there's a way to get a little bit more personal maybe. And I don't know how personally she is involved with the or that one person can be with the senior population, but there's probably a gap between the people that go regularly to some of our meetings or some of like the programming and the other people who maybe don't go but might benefit from it. And just wondered if so what am I saying? I guess I'm saying is finding some better ways to get to know all of the seniors in the community, even those that aren't quite as involved, to see what their needs are. So like with the Kind Call, like what Chris put on there, finding some ways to help everyone become more involved, I guess. So, and that could translate to seeing what everyone's specific needs are. I'm sorry, I'm not articulating well. I'm just thinking a lot of the stuff we've talked a lot about, like with the transportation and with some of the other stuff, and figuring out different ways to make sure everyone's getting that information is kind of what I'm thinking about.
Thank you.
Yeah, building on what Melissa said, I was, being
being pretty new here, was impressed with how many of these comments we were already addressing and working on. And I think that's a credit to everybody who's been on this committee for some time. You know, sometimes I almost wonder if the voices were the voices that we hear here, and because it was so spot on with a lot of things that we do, and particularly with all the efforts Lenny has been leading, and I just think that's such a credit to both this committee and Lenny's efforts on many of these projects, and so I think a lot of this is, you know, continuing the hit on things we've already been doing, because they definitely seem to be responsive here, like increased intergenerational programming, like the HARP program, and so forth. Clearly, the theme that I think needs continuous improvement, which I think as a committee we probably can continue to emphasize and address, is transportation, and transportation in every form that is mentioned here, both traditional bus transportation and alternative and new transportation. You know, that came up, you know, probably 20 different times throughout the reports in various ways. And I do think that is something that is within our reach. Obviously, the 800-pound gorilla, which, you know, I know Jeff's on this call, and Amy and Jim, and you guys have been working for years, are the zoning questions. And my guess is the suggestions here are hardly uncontroversial. My guess is they would involve a lot of debate, but at the same time, I don't think we should be afraid to wade into many of those conversations, because I think there's some good detailed zoning stuff, which is way beyond my experience, but would love to learn and continuing to understand. So I mean, those were my three big takeaways of, like, one, you know, keep doing what we're doing on so many of the intergenerational stuff. I know Lenny's also been kind of talking about the census thing. Can we be doing that? I think Melissa's point about the full-time person is right on, but I mean, I think continuing what we're doing, adding potential additional layer of more concentrated work on some of these transportation issues, and then, you know, we got to address the zoning somehow, and how we do that, how we go about it as a committee, I think we needs to be on the table.
Well, Jim, do you want to speak to the transportation issue as far as Dan is concerned? Our SEMTA person?
Yeah, I'm gonna come back to that.
Okay.
Yep.
Should I mention it or?
You can if you want. Absolutely.
Well, the manager of the small bus section of SEMTA lives in Huntington Woods, grew up in Huntington Woods, and happens to be one of my former students from his college days. And so Dan, his name is Dan, and Jim and I are hoping to sit down with him in a meeting and discuss various opportunities and options. That was it. I passed him when he was a student, so I think he got a good grade. So he owes me.
There you go.
As far as that's concerned, he owes me.
And I know that you're not going to let him forget that.
No. I'll bring it up several times, actually.
Oh, I think that would be a worthwhile meeting for us to have.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay. How about you, Lenny?
Yeah, I read all these 4 pamphlets 2 weeks ago, just before our meeting, and read them all again yesterday and today. And fortunately or unfortunately, the first one that I read was the North Huntington Woods redevelopment plan. I thought that was outstanding. I thought that's innovative. I thought that really gives us a sense of where our city could go in the future. And it addresses this vibrant core and this welcoming corridor. And it answers within itself without having to get into a lot of these other, like the housing plan with the zoning and the this and the that, which is probably going to be very political. This really looks at one thing which I think most people could see as really a boon for Huntington Woods. developing 11 Mile, developing the complex that we have right now into something completely different, and making it user-friendly and making it an attractive place for people to be, and incorporating some of these other ideas like a coffee place or a little shopping market or a little walking things, everything connected. I mean, I was blown away both times that I read this thing, that it's just so comprehensive and so exciting. I don't think like that. I can't think big like these kind of things, but this was, I was excited when I read this. And I think to go along with that is that the senior amenities and lifestyle analysis with a picture of Mary on the front, that one, that's got a lot of practical things. That's got a lot of the things that we've been struggling with and going with and trying to create. And there's like two different things going on here. One is this big plan, which I think we should really work toward because it's so comprehensive, and it really could really invigorate and make Huntington Woods a place better for everyone, not just seniors, but it would really enhance senior life a great deal. I think the other thing is that was in this engagement summary, when we went through the different ideas from the different cities. I think Cleveland, Seattle, Boston, Southfield, there's good ideas in every one of those places, but they're all way bigger than we are. Some of the ideas that I thought we could borrow, steal, incorporate, what have you, Cleveland, medical equipment exchange program, a call-in center for seniors, intergenerational garden program, Boston, Older American Month, partner with the Alzheimer's Association to build a dementia-friendly trailway place for Boston, enhancing volunteer opportunities or maybe even part-time opportunities for seniors, awards for seniors who participate in ageism class or education. Seattle, focusing on senior citizen physical education, classes, passing the resolution to be age-friendly. Even if we can't do all this AARP thing without jumping through 20 million hoops, we can still make a statement that we kind of would value our seniors and want to make this town more comfortable for people as they age. More pedestrian amenities, better lighting, benches, public bathroom in walking areas, traffic calming methods. And when I read that, I thought right back to this North Huntington Woods plan, where they have all these additional crossings and they slow the 11-mile traffic down to 2 lanes. There's a bike lane, there's a turning lane, and it changes the whole feeling, kind of in the way that Coolidge between 11 and 12 kind of has changed, since it's not 4 lanes, it's now only 2 lanes with parking on the side. I think it's great. A walking program for the elderly in Seattle called Sound Steps. Use more printed materials. We've talked about that, passing along people who are handicapped on this online stuff. Southfield suggested technology training in the library. Another really nice idea. I have another idea from all these larger cities, and I think that needs some exploring from us. And that is, what do really small villages and really small little tiny towns in out of the way parts of our state, not to mention the country, but let's try and keep it more Michigan based, that are connected to the suburbs, that are just little villages, little towns in themselves. Maybe they have a public school, maybe they have a small high school, maybe they're part of a district. What do they do specifically to integrate and incorporate their senior population? In my business days, I called on facilities in small towns, and I saw a lot of volunteers at the nursing home or in city halls or in places, the post office, just things in the schools. And it seems like we could take a look at that too, because even though we're part of metropolitan Detroit, and even though we're a much more sophisticated city than most cities, a square mile and a half, we might learn something from these places that are more out of the way, who don't have all these connections and expressways connecting them to all the cultural and artistic things of a Detroit metropolitan area. but they do things for seniors. They do things for their seniors. They do things for their people as they age that we might be able to learn something from, as well as from all these big cities. I think that would be worth exploring. I think that, I think we're onto something. And I think this is two different directions. I think the redevelopment plan for the north part of the city is one whole massive, huge category that's exciting as all hell. I think the more immediate thing we can deal with are some of these suggestions in the lifestyles analysis, things that we've been talking about, making people more comfortable, having them work on transportation, having them checked on, having them feel a part of things. I think that there's a lot right there, but the big plan is really exciting and does incorporate a lot of those things that we're trying to do. So I'm really excited. I think we need to deal with two different directions. The more within our grasp right now, and the bigger picture, which will really take our city into the next century. Thanks.
Lenny, I think that was, I think it was well said. I think that, in my opinion, when I looked at this, I too believe that was quite comprehensive. It covered, I mean, and I had the pleasure of sitting in all the focus groups too. So they really captured a lot that was stated in those focus groups. So the challenge, I think, Lenny, though, is on us to identify, you know, as a committee, how do we tackle this, right? I mean, we can have lots of ideas and say, yeah, I like this, I like this, I like this, but how are we going to go about prioritizing and tackling the things that are on the implementation plan? Okay, because there has to be somewhat of a systematic approach for us to identify what are the things that are more practical to attend to right now, what are the things that are not practical at the moment, but are a longer range plan, and also who else needs to be involved in making these things happen, and what other input do we need from our senior population in relation to, I'll give you an example. Shuttle service, right? That was brought up on a number of occasions in the focus group. It would be great to have a shuttle service that would take us to Kroger, this place, you know, at least once a week or twice a week. Well, okay, that was a small group of people that were talking about that. Well, what are all those places that would be good to have a shuttle service? What would be the good places to go to? And how often do we need to go to it? And when's the best time to go to those things? I mean, those are the things that need to be fettered out. I think the idea is good, but there's some work that has to be done to kind of get to the point where we have enough information to put it forward to the city commission saying this is something that needs to be implemented. Okay. So I think the challenge, I mean, you guys tell me what you think. I mean, I think the challenge is for us is to say, okay, we got this plan and we all believe it's comprehensive. How are we going to break it down in a way that we can tackle it? And looking at short-term and long-term, and what are the ways that, you know, that we maybe, that we believe, if we do believe that the city needs to be involved in having somebody that can champion these things long-term, you know, because our committee members are going to change over time. Okay, and how are we going to keep this initiative moving? So I'm going to propose something, and I'd like to get your guys' feedback. Okay, so we have transportation, housing, and social and community services. Those are the three areas in the senior amenities and lifestyle analysis. There's a lot of things that encompass a lot of things that our seniors have said that they want to be looked at in our city, or some things that be implemented or changed. Okay, so what are your thoughts and the committee members in terms of breaking that each of those categories down and creating a subgroup with another committee member to sit down and look at, let's just say, I'm just throwing this out there, Chris, like Chris and I look at transportation, or Kay and I look at transportation, and we go through that and do the same type of exercise you did, Chris, in relation to what is short time frame and lower cost in that particular category, what shorter time frame and higher cost, longer time frame, lower cost, and longer time frame, higher cost, and breaking things down in that manner, and then identifying what other city committees, like communication committee, what other city departments like the library need to be involved in some of these initiatives. Okay, and also I think if we come up with some other ideas that we think that should be in here, like for instance, I was really surprised that the street sign issue wasn't put in this plan, because that did come up. I mean, it did come up in the focus groups. It was stated. I don't know how it missed it here in this plan, but it's something I've heard probably a million times from a variety of different people. Okay, well, nothing's to say that we don't add that to a portion of this plan. Okay, so we break it up into subgroups and we tackle it, and we create our own, time frame and different, short term, long term, cost, high cost, so forth. And we spend a little time on it. And then we identify also items that we are going to need more feedback from our senior community on. Like, for example, we need feedback in terms of the shuttle service. We need more feedback in relation to transportation operating till 7 in the evening. What do people need help with? How frequently do we think that's going to be utilized? That type of thing. What are your thoughts about that? Now that means there's going to be some work for us on our end outside of the committee to do that, and then bring back, similar to what Chris did, to our group in terms of the, this 4-square kind of like layout.
I think it's a great idea. Hold on. Yeah. I apologize. The garbage people are here, and we always give them cold Cokes because they're essential workers. So we were just coordinating that. I apologize, Jim. I think that's a great idea, and then maybe we can carve out areas of interest. My only concern is, can we look into a crystal ball and see where we're going from here as far as COVID is concerned, and as far as having restrictions placed on us, and how we're able to go forward with really any of this, because I know in talking with the SEMTA folks right now, their concern is, is the governor going to be forced to come back down from 5 to 4 because of an influx of COVID as a result of people not wearing masks or social distancing. So I guess, will that potentially have an impact or an effect as far as how we move forward with issues like transportation, with issues like utilizing the rec center and having different amenities? Well, it certainly gives us a longer time frame to discuss these issues, but
Right.
There's a level of uncertainty for Michigan right now, and that's a concerning issue. Is will it in any way, shape, or form have a direct impact on how we do go about things in the future? Are we going to be able to provide the seniors with what they need? Well, for that matter, are we going to be able to provide our citizens with what they need? Other than, of course, Jeff having the weekly parade, which is a good idea. But other than that, how do we move forward with that?
Right.
So that's just an issue or concern for me. But yeah, I think if we would break it down, that would be terrific as far as a couple of committee folks. But I'm retired, so that is not an issue for me. My time is pretty available. I don't know about the rest of the committee though.
Well,
Where suckers probably have to work for a living.
yeah.
Well, I agree with Kay, and I agree with you, Jim. I think it has to be broken down. I think we have to work towards post Corona time and gear towards that, because since we haven't got a crystal ball to tell us how long, when, where this is all going and how it's going to impact people, we have to assume that normalcy will return at some point in the future, hopefully closer rather than further. But this is still planning and making a plan and making recommendations, which shouldn't stop us. And if we have to modify those very plans for COVID awareness, okay, so we do. But that's not where we're going. I don't think COVID is going to go on for the next 100 years, or the next 10 years. And so I think we have to plan for past that. So yeah, I think we need to break this down. And I think pairing up with another person and filling this out and answering some of those questions about where do we go from here, I think that's very appropriate.
Yeah, I think that has just been my experience with material that is this heavy with information. If we don't have a systematic way of approaching it, then we're not going to have really a systematic way of approaching it. We're just going to be picking things here and there, and there will be things that are probably priorities that do get missed. But I think the timing actually, COVID's going on and so forth. It's going to take, it'll delay implementation of some of these things when we get to that.
Yeah.
But at least gives us the time to start planning right now, or at least breaking things down in a way that we can identify what are short-term things that we can attend to. And maybe looking at it with the COVID eye too, what are some things that can be done right now that that can help enhance communication, or whatever the case may be, about what is available, service-wise, transportation-wise, what's going on. Chris, Melissa, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's a great way to do it. That's be a really good way to tackle all the issues. There are a lot of issues. I'm all in favor of that.
Agreed.
Okay. So it's just a matter of, there's a couple things, probably a couple ways to approach it. Is identifying whatever you have a really strong passion or interest for, that's probably, what you should be connected with. Something that maybe you even have experience with, that type of thing. Do people in our committee have, preferences in terms of the things that, they want to work on with somebody? Anybody?
Well, before we do that, I think you referenced about 5-10 minutes ago, you had a sense of how you wanted to coordinate this, what questions we want to address, what issues we want to address and answer. And let's put a little format together before we say, I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to do this. So that we're all kind of bringing, wherever we do go, there is some sense of we're doing this all in a similar kind of way, even though it's a different topic.
Right. Well, yeah, we can do that. I was planning after the meeting to put together an email to send to the committee saying, these are, putting my thoughts on paper. This is what my thoughts were. If the committee prefers that I do that first, and then people chime in and say, yeah, I'm interested in this category, this one. And then we can, as long as everybody doesn't say the same thing. But by the way, I mean, that being said, I don't want to ignore the folks that are here on the call or actually the Zoom meeting with us, you know, like Bonnie and Jeff and Gail and Claire. Do you have any feedback for us in relation to this?
Claire, is she still with us?
Yeah, I just came to listen, and so far, I think that it seems to me you're going in the right direction.
Well, that's good to know.
I have some concerns. There are 3 groups of seniors, the go-go, the slow-go, and the no-go. And the no-go really are homebound whether there's COVID or not. It might be useful during the next year if we could survey who drives, who doesn't drive, who's a widower. It might be useful to at least be able to break things down so we understand or we can figure out some needs matches. A lot of times when we do planning, it's circled around the go-go and the slow-go. And one of the quirks about Huntington Woods is, for some odd reason, the people that live here want to stay here, and they stay here longer than in most other communities. During this period of time, we're going to have higher real isolation. So part of a survey of the actual residents could be helpful in just communication. I would think that the city clerk in the old files, although they're supposedly not there now, has age information because they have date of birth. That's not collected now, but there may be some files that we can deal with on that. We keep guessing what this population looks like. We're going to know the numbers. We're going to roughly know in smaller quadrants, but not that much smaller, what the populations look like that are senior. And those populations are going to continue to increase. SEMCOG projects through 2045 that those numbers go up. And as you deal with each of these areas, I would just hope that we can look at that. Even if we can take what AARP has and modify those standards so we can meet as many of those as possible. I personally feel that seniors have been left out of the mix for a long time, even though we're way ahead of many other communities.
Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate that. Any other comments?
Hasn't Lenny been trying the census, or I remember?
I have, Jim and I are going to get together in terms of the drop-off mailing kinds of things. I have a fairly accurate compilation of people who are 73 or 74 years and older of the city as of this past spring. More geared towards how to deliver mail to them than, but it wouldn't be that hard to figure out how many people are this age, that age, the other age.
All right. Okay. So is it the committee's preference that I put together kind of a framework for this, send it out to folks, and then it'll be a group email, and then we can decide who's going to tackle what areas? You know,
We're still meeting on the 23rd, right?
Yes.
So that's not that long from now.
No, it's not. That sound okay to everybody? You know, so give some thought to it.
Excellent.
Okay. I'm leaving to go out of town late Friday for a week, so I'll get that out to everybody before I leave. And so if you could just send back some feedback in terms of, your interest areas. And hopefully we'll have some diversification there, and we can figure out, by the next meeting, next senior advisory committee, how we're going to split this up. Okay.
Okay.
Does anybody have a sense of what they'd like to do right now? I mean, I don't really, it doesn't bother, I go any which way on this. I don't have any strong feeling.
I mean,
All of them kind of interest me.
I all three of them interest me, but I think probably the transportation and what was the other? Social and community services probably are things I probably would focus on.
Well, Jeff will probably never speak to me again, but transportation is not my first choice. My first choice would be how do we meet their needs as far as socialization for those folks that want to be able to have more opportunities to get together. So mine would be more social than transportation. But if nobody else wants transportation, I'll take it, and I'll help out in any way I can.
Okay. All right. That being said, I'll put that together. Amy, any other comments, feedback that you have?
Because of the Open Meetings Act, you can't do business or make decisions via email. So you can email back and forth what your preferences are, but we will formally create those subgroups at the July 23rd meeting.
Okay. Fair enough. Okay.
Now, is there enough of us to adequately staff the subgroups? Or do we need to reach out into the community for other folks or other people on different committees?
I think that if we have our whole contingent, we have three categories. It would be great to have 2 per category.
Okay.
And I don't think that should keep us from reaching out to other departments, other people, other committees in relation to that particular category.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Anything else, anybody?
Yeah, I'd like to ask a question about the concept of housing. It seems so definitive in this one proposal, the North Huntington Woods Development Plan. I'm just kind of wondering where in the short term we think we want to go. I mean, zoning and rezoning and all this stuff, that is really, down the road. I'm just not sure if we meet about housing now, what we can really do to address that hasn't really been very well laid out here.
Well, I have a question. Are the tennis courts on 11 Mile near Woodward sacrosanct? Or is that property, because we do have tennis courts in the rec center area, are those tennis courts potentially available for some level of development? A senior high-rise, relocating City Hall, is that sacrosanct, those tennis courts in that property?
That hasn't been discussed, but I think that needs more property. City Hall would need more property than the 11 Mile Park.
Okay.
But alternatives are great to look at. What about Woodward? Rehabbing one of those buildings.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, I think you're onto something, Lenny, because I look at I should say Wendy. I look at that too, and there's so much that needs to be really, I think, tackled by the Planning Commission. That's not something I don't think our committee is going to be making decisions about, or, I mean, the committee can make a recommendation that the plan, actually some of those things have already been recommended to the city commission in relation to those types of things, because there was an adoption of the report by the commission. If I remember correctly, right, Amy, in relation to the senior housing study and so forth. So there were some items that were already in there in relation to, zoning and so forth. That sound right, Amy?
Yeah, the senior advisory committee did the senior aging housing for an aging population report, and there were a number of suggestions that came out of some charrettes and focus groups. The Granny Pods was one of them, and that did get referred to the Planning Commission. They in turn set up a subcommittee, a senior housing subcommittee that met for about a half a year, and then that got sidelined because the city commission hadn't decided whether or not they wanted to make it just senior housing or if they wanted to make it multi-generational or not. So that's something that's still being looked at. It's probably going to be part of the master plan discussion, so we can get input from the entire community. But it's sort of it's a concept that's still there. It's not dead, but it hasn't gotten a lot of attention recently.
I mean, somewhere in reading these reports, there was reference to the senior advisory committee making a recommendation to adopt some of the things, et cetera, et cetera. And I don't remember which one it was in. It wasn't a big whole section on it, but it was mentioned that it should be looked at by us. And so I don't know. I don't know.
I'm not sure on that, Lenny.
Yeah.
So anybody have anything else? I'll put together that framework and I'll get that out to all the committee members. Okay. Any other comments, questions?
Cool. I have one thing for Chris. Chris, I'm not big on this email stuff. If I could get a copy, I'll come by your house. I have a copy or a picture of this 4-square thing you made for everybody. I'd like to see it.
I'll go on a bike ride and drop one off to you, Lenny.
I can walk to your house. I walk every day. It's fine.
I have a feeling that Chris and Lenny are going to be working together. All right. Well, no, you know what, folks? It was great to see everybody.
Stay safe, everyone.
Yeah, stay healthy. Wear your mask. I'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Have a nice trip.
Thank you. Take care, everybody.
Okay.
All right, you too. Bye-bye.
Stay cool.
Thank you.